Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to be doing a GTX 970 versus 970 video. And it's going to be the Asus Strix GTX 970. And that's going to be going up against the Gigabyte G1 Gaming GTX 970, or the WindForce. Or you could call the Strix a Direct C2. They just redone the names for some reason. Maybe this is the generation for changing your name. So, two 970s against each other, so this should be quite interesting. Now, I'm going to preface this showdown by saying that 970s are kind of unlike the 290s, in the sense that they're a lot closer together. There's not as much variance in terms of temperatures, noise, performance, all that. The 970s so far seem very close together. They're all very good. But with that out of the way, let's talk about the GPUs in these. So obviously, GM204 Maxwell GPU, same as what you get in the 980, just like slightly cut down, 20% cut down version in these in terms of CUDA cores and texture units. Now they have the same memory as the 980, and these two have the same memory as each other. So that's 4 gigabytes of GDDR5. They're both at 7010 megahertz, and obviously both are on that 256-bit memory bus. However, the GPU speeds are different on these two different cards. So they do have GPU Boost 2.0, which means that the GPU will automatically overclock itself if temperatures allow, which obviously these new GPUs are just so thermally efficient that they do very well. So that's why they actually go higher than what their boost is rated at. However, the boost for the Asus Strix is 1253 megahertz. And the highest I observed from my testing out, remember I don't do overclocking, was 1278 megahertz. Although I do think these would overclock very, very well. So 1278 megahertz out of the Asus Strix. And for the G1 Gaming, it's rated as a 1329 megahertz boost clock, but it actually went all the way up to 1366 megahertz, so it went up pretty high. Now, I've heard a few of you ask why I don't overclock. Now, there's two main reasons that come to mind, then we'll carry on with the rest of the video. First one is that every card overclocks different, so it's not really fair. Every GPU is different, and some overclock better than others, so it's not really that fair. And two, most of the times I'm borrowing these cards from Playtech, who helps me out and gives me these cards for my reviews and stuff like that. And so it's not really a good idea if they're saying, oh, try out this card, if you go and overclock it and if something went wrong or something like that. I know it's very not likely to happen, but you don't borrow a car from a dealership and then go and do a million burnouts and max it out on the highway and stuff like that. Well, some people do, but it's not good. It's not good. Anyways, let's get into the coolers now. So the Strix cooler is basically a Direct C2 cooler we've all come to know, and I'm not going to say love because I haven't been a huge fan of it. So the same thing that we've seen for a while. Just their big 10mm heat pipes at the top, the direct copper touching the GPU itself, quite large heat sinks on it. If you want to know more about it, go back and watch my unboxing and overviews, because I go over all the features with the cards and go over the coolers more in depth. We'll just briefly go over it. The G1 Gaming is just the standard WindForce cooler, just with upgraded fans and upgraded shrouding. The same thing could be said for the Strix, just upgraded fans and upgraded shrouding. The one thing I want to say about both of these, but particularly more the Strix, was the fan blades look very flimsy on it. They're very, very thin. So yeah, that's one thing I noticed. But the Gigabyte ones kind of look the same too. Maybe that's just me, but it doesn't really matter anyways, I'm just saying. There's also a difference in the I/O, so that's a good one to go to. So the Strix has more standard I/O, so we just have DisplayPort, HDMI, and DVI-D, DVI-I. Whereas the G1 Gaming, or the WindForce, has more what the reference 980 and stuff has, which is the triple display port, which means triple G-Sync monitors, and a single HDMI port, and then the DVI, DVI-D. And that's more what I like to see. So yeah, a bit of a win there, depending on the setup you're going to have for the G1 Gaming. Now, size-wise, they're quite similar, but there are a few differences. So the G1 Gaming is 312 millimeters long. It is a long card. It's about as long as a Vapor X, which is pretty massive, or the PCS Plus, which are both huge cards. Whereas Strix is 280 millimeters long. The G1 Gaming is 129 millimeters wide, where the Strix is 140 millimeters wide, so the Strix is a bit fatter. And the G1 Gaming is 43 millimeters tall to the 40 millimeters of the Asus. So both about as high as each other, but yeah, the G1 Gaming is quite a bit longer, and the Strix is a bit wider. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into the benchmarks and see how they perform. So as always, we can't do two of the benchmarks because the results come out kind of funny, although I guess I could do it because these are two 970s against each other, so oh well, let's just do it then. So up first is Furmark. So I run this for 15 minutes, 4 times MSA, 1080p. The Gigabyte G1 Gaming scored 34 FPS average, and the Strix scored 33 frames per second average. So 1 frame there better for the G1 Gaming. It does come in with a slightly higher boost clock. Then Unigine Valley, this is on the Extreme HD preset. The Gigabyte G1 Gaming scored 59 frames per second average. The Asus Strix scored 57.2 frames per second average. So another bit of a win there for the G1 Gaming, about 2 frames. As I said earlier, these cards are pretty close. Now to Unigine Heaven, this is DirectX 11, everything maxed out 1080p. The Gigabyte G1 Gaming 970 scored 56.5 frames per second average. The Asus Strix 970 scored 53.8 frames per second average. So seeing about the same amount of gap there again. And Heaven again, this time OpenGL, once again everything maxed out, 1080p. The G1 Gaming 970, 52.1 frames per second average. The Strix 970, 49.6 frames per second average. So once again, quite close. Now onto some games. So Tomb Raider, this is everything maxed out without VSync. The G1 Gaming 970, 83.8 frames per second average. The Strix 970, 80.7 frames per second average. So a bit more of a win there that time for the Gigabyte card. And finally, Bioshock Infinite. This is on user setting 2, 1080p. The Gigabyte G1 Gaming GTX 970, 119 frames per second average. The Asus Strix 970, 115.9 frames per second average. So, not much we can really say. There's not a huge difference there. About 2, 3, 4 frames better. For the G1 Gaming, it's kind of expected because it's almost got about 100 megahertz, just less than 100 megahertz bump up in terms of the GPU speeds. So yeah, that's what you'd probably come to expect. And as far as overclocking goes, I didn't try it, but if what Gigabyte's saying that they more cherry-pick their GPUs, and from what I've heard back from the community, which is that they overclock like crazy, I'd probably say for you overclockers out there, the G1 Gaming is probably the better pick. But that's just from what I've heard so far. I'm sure the Strix still overclocks very well. Also, now into temperatures. Now this is the interesting one. So for this, I took the highest temperature I saw during the Furmark test, and also took the highest fan speed we saw. So in Furmark, the Gigabyte G1 Gaming 970 rose to 65 degrees Celsius. So that's very, very good. And that was at 66% fan speed. Now the Asus Strix 970 rose to 67 degrees Celsius, and that was at 41% fan speed, so a lot less fan speed. Now let me also say that the Strix, the fans only come on at 65 degrees Celsius. So I think if you had them going all the time, that might change, but since that's kind of like a key feature of it, I left it like that. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's pretty amazing that there's that difference in fan speed, although these are two separate coolers, and obviously one's triple fan and one's dual fan. But yeah, quite interesting there. So I'd call that one about even, if anything, maybe a little bit of a win for the Strix. Now, I also took the highest temperatures I saw during the Heaven benchmark, the DirectX 11. And the highest the Gigabyte G1 Gaming rose to was 63 degrees Celsius, while the Asus Strix rose to 69 degrees Celsius, which is quite bizarre because for some reason these Strix coolers, and it was the first time I ever saw it when we did the 285 Strix, the temperatures go higher in the Heaven benchmark than the Furmark torture test, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it went to 69 during that, 2 degrees hotter, and quite a bit hotter than the G1 Gaming. So as far as the Heaven one goes, it was a much more of a win for the G1 Gaming. Although in saying that, the fan speed was still a bit less on the Strix, so if you ran just as an aggressive fan curve, I'd say it'd be about even. So it's hard to call it as far as temperatures go. Now on to noise. So both these cards are very good. All the 970s I've tested have been very good in terms of noise. But the one thing I have to say, which a lot of people have been talking about, and I've tested a lot of cards so I notice it very quickly, is the coil one on these 970s is actually quite high, and I don't really understand why that is, considering that the 970 GPU, this new GM204 Maxwell GPU, is supposed to be so power efficient and stuff like that. And you can tell, you know, being that the Strix only has a single 8-pin, whereas the G1 Gaming has an 8-pin and 6-pin, like we covered in the unboxing videos. So I find that quite interesting, but yeah, they do check out quite a bit of coil whine. Maybe it's just that, no, it's not. It's not that you just can't hear the coil whine over the lesser fan speeds, because there's cards that are very quiet, like the Tri-X, which is in my rig right now. There's a very quiet R9 290, and you don't notice the coil whine. I actually chucked it in just for that reason, ran the same test and listened, and I could barely hear the coil whine coming off it, but you really seriously hear it on both of these. So that's one thing to consider. But we're not going to show you the noise levels at idle because the fans aren't even on the Strix, and the G1 Gaming is dead silent as well, so there's no point doing that. But I'll show you what they sound like on load. So this was during the Unigine Valley benchmark, and this is what the Gigabyte G1 Gaming sounded like during that benchmark. And this is what the Asus Strix 970 sounds like during the same benchmark. So, very good in terms of noise. Honestly, I don't have any complaints at all. I thought they were both very, very good. But yeah, the coil whine is quite high, but the Strix, I would have to give it, is by a hair, or just slightly quieter than the G1 Gaming. So I'd give it the win in that area. Now to the conclusion. So this one's very difficult. As I told you guys at the very start, the 970s do all do very, very well, and so far I've tested the Strix, the G1 Gaming, obviously in this video, and then I've done the MSI previously, the Gaming 4G. And all of them I would group to be very, very close together. In terms of performance and overclockability, I'd say I'd give the win to the G1 Gaming. It does outperform the Strix here, which is mainly because of the higher boost clock through GPU Boost 2.0. However, I would still believe that the G1 Gaming is the better overclocker just because it's more cherry-picked GPU in it, and also just from what I've heard back from lots of people saying they overclock like absolute crazy. You're like people saying pretty much you're guaranteed 1500 megahertz if you do it properly, which is just crazy overclocking on these. So I'd say the win there for the G1 Gaming. I also think the I/O is better on the Gigabyte card. And then in terms of temperatures, it's so close that it's hard to call it either way. Honestly, I'd probably say it's better for the Strix only because it has a more relaxed fan curve, but still do quite well in terms of temperature. So you could run a much more aggressive fan curve than the G1 Gaming, although both of them are going to be excellent. But I'd say that maybe be a slight win for the Strix, and noise would be a slight win for the Strix as well. So it is very hard to say. Personally, if they were exactly the same price, I'd give it to the G1 Gaming. Honestly, I just think it would be the overall better card, especially if you're going to overclock. And even if you're not going to overclock, I think I would just prefer it. I think of it as the better card, and then the side lights up as well, the Windforce, so it looks a bit cool. I know I don't go into looks when I do these, but it does look a little bit better as well. But I just think of it as the better card, but very, very close, and I would only say it by a hair. But honestly, my recommendation for you guys is, if you're picking out of one of these two cards, just pick whatever's cheaper. Honestly, if the Strix is $20 cheaper, buy that. If the G1 Gaming is $20 cheaper, buy that. Even if it's $10 cheaper, buy the one that's cheaper. Honestly, it's that close. So just buy whichever one's cheaper. And if there's a bigger gap than that, then it's obvious. So where would I say the MSI fits into that? It's very hard to say as well, because it is very close. So I'd say that kind of goes for all of the 970s I've tested. Just get the one which is cheaper, at least out of the three, the MSI, the Asus, and the Gigabyte, because they all perform very closely and they all perform very well. But so far, out of all the ones I've tested, I like the G1 Gaming the best, but that's just my personal opinion, like always. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. Leave a like if you liked it, and subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.